Hurricane Orlene hit Mexico's southwestern coast on Monday, making landfall in the Pacific state of Sinaloa as a Category 1 storm. In Russia, the Legislative Chamber of Parliament, better known as the State Duma, approved draft constitutional laws on the accession of the Donbass, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions to the Russian Federation. The Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas, welcomes the resolution of the crisis in Burkina Faso. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Mexico, survivors and students protested in the streets of Mexico City on the 54th anniversary of the Tlatelolco massacre. On October 2, 1968, in the Tlatelolco section of Mexico City, the armed forces opened fire on a group of unarmed civilians in the Plaza de las Tres Culturas who were protesting the upcoming 1968 Summer Olympics. The Mexican government and the media at the time claimed that the armed forces had been provoked by demonstrators shooting at them. The number of deaths gathered from eyewitnesses estimated the actual death toll from 300 to 400, and around 1,000 people were arrested.
October the 2nd will never be forgotten. The memory of the students who participated and changed this world, my world, made an impact years later. The first time I came here was in 1979. 11 years had passed and it was moving. Today I come with my daughter, who is 21 years old, who is studying philosophy, to accompany her and to continue believing that change is possible. I think it is very important that the state recognizes for the first time that it was indeed oppressive, but that it should not remain just talk, that we should really find justice.
Now we move on to other topics. Hurricane Orlene hit Mexico's southwestern coast on Monday, making landfall in the Pacific state of Sinaloa as a Category 1 storm. In its latest public advisory, the National Hurricane Center said Orlene, with maximum sustained winds of 140 kilometers per hour, weakened from a Category 1 storm before hitting land and is expected to continue to weaken. The storm arrived onshore just north of the border between the states in Sinaloa and Nayarit and was around 75 kilometers southeast of the port city of Mazatlan. The National Hurricane Center also warned that Orlene could cause torrential rains and flash flooding, along with possible landslides. During the Angelus prayers, Pope Francis expressed his solidarity with the people of Cuba and Florida after they were badly hit by Hurricane Ian. According to officials, the death toll in Florida has risen to 62 as the United States Coast Guard continues to conduct search and rescue missions.
I am close to the people of Cuba and Florida, both hit by a violent hurricane. May the Lord welcome the victims, give comfort and hope to those who suffer, and sustain their commitment of solidarity.
Haiti's government announced that at least 7 people have died from cholera, raising concerns about another potentially catastrophic epidemic, like the one that broke out a decade ago and killed nearly 10,000 people. The cases came in a community called the Yaquet in southern Port-au-Prince and the seaside town of Cité du Soleil, where thousands of people live in crowded, unsanitary conditions. Food or water contaminated with the cholera bacteria can lead to severe diarrhea and dehydration that can be deadly. The United Nations said in a statement that it is working with Haiti's government to gather an emergency response to the potential outbreak. The deaths came as a lack of fuel and ongoing protests shut down the availability of basic services across the country, including medical care and clean water, which is key to helping fight cholera and keep patients alive.
According to all the information we have, the number of deaths range from 7 to 8. And one death that happened in the course of today, unfortunately, was a person who died in the community. This is a problem when there are people who have diarrhea, vomiting, and have no way to get the person to the health center where they could survive. I will take the opportunity to ask the protesters that have the right to protest, but I ask them to allow potable, drinkable water and ambulances to go into neighborhoods they need to get to.
More than 2,000 military and police officers surrounded and closed off a town in El Salvador in a search operation for gang members accused in a killing. The large-scale operation of the town of Comasagua is the latest example of heavy-handed tactics by the government to eradicate street gangs. President Nayib Bukele wrote in his Twitter account that members of the Mara Salvatrucha gang were believed to still be inside Comasagua, about 30 kilometers southwest of the capital, San Salvador. Bukele requested Congress grant him extraordinary powers after gangs were blamed for 62 killings on March 26, and that decree has been renewed every month since then. So far, the emergency decree has resulted in the arrest of more than 50,000 people. The peace delegation of the National Liberation Army of Colombia announced its return to the country from Havana, Cuba, where it stayed for the last few years after the interruption of negotiations with the government. In a statement in Twitter account, the delegation said that alongside guarantor countries like Cuba, Norway, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, their return was carried out safely and with all guarantees. The National Liberation Army representatives also thanked the guarantor nations for their support, hospitality, and respect of international law. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government welcomed the compliance with the protocols agreed between Colombia and the National Liberation Army. The return of the peace delegation followed the talks initiated last August between a representation of the Colombian government, led by Gustavo Petro, and the National Liberation Army to resume the peace talks. We'll take a short break now, but first, remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. More news coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. With 99.99% of the votes counted, former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva has won the first round of the presidential elections by more than 5 percentage points against incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. In this first presidential round, Lula got 48.4% of the votes, while President Bolsonaro got 43.2%. The figures disclosed by the Superior Electoral Court anticipates a tiebreaker between the two candidates in the second electoral round to be held next October the 30th. Brazil's National Electoral Tribunal President Alexandre de Moraes, after announcing the results, praised the calm and discipline of Brazilian people while holding the elections and also acknowledged the low rates of abstentionism or blank vote. And once Lula's victory became known, several presidents of Latin American countries congratulated the Brazilian leader. The Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, posted a message on his Twitter account celebrating Lula's win, saying, "I congratulate Lula for his victory in the first round. I congratulate the Brazilian people for their enormous electoral participation." Also, Alberto Fernandez, the president of Argentina, sent regards to Lula for his victory. The head of state took to Twitter and wrote, "Congratulate my dear Lula da Silva for his victory in the first round, and I extend my sincere respect to the people of Brazil for their deep democratic expression." On the other hand, Bolivian President Luis Arce Catacora joined to the congratulations to Lula and tweeted, "We congratulate the brother Lula da Silva, who won the first round of the elections in Brazil, and we salute the Brazilian people who demonstrated that democracy is the only way to build fair, inclusive societies with social peace." Also, the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, congratulated Lula and the people of Brazil and wrote on Twitter, "Congratulations, brother and companion Lula. The people of Brazil demonstrated once again their democratic vocation and especially their inclination for equality and justice." Now we move on to other topics. The British government was forced on Monday to backtrack on the proposed abolition of a tax percentage. The negative reaction of Prime Minister Liz Truss' partners and the collapse of the economy were the triggering factors. Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng announced that the government will not lower the top income tax bracket from 45 to 40%, accepting that the decision had, in his words, become a distraction from the primary mission, which was to address the challenges facing the United Kingdom. He ratified that they will not go ahead with the abolition. The fiscal plan presented on September 23rd not only plummeted the pound sterling, but also the electoral expectations of the Conservatives. In Russia, on Monday, the Legislative Chamber of Parliament, better known as the State Duma, approved draft constitutional laws on the accession of the Donbas, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions to the Russian Federation. The decision on the fourth regions was made unanimously. Also, the Russian Duma ratified, based on those recently approved laws, that the regions of the new Russia will keep their names as Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia People's Republics. This comes after President Vladimir Putin signed the accession agreements with the four previously acknowledged states on September 30th. Also on Sunday, the Constitutional Court ruled out that each of the four accession agreements are indeed approved, but have yet to enter into force. China said it was deeply concerned about the leaks from the Nord Stream pipelines and called for the safety of its cross-border infrastructure to be guaranteed in the rest of Asia. During a special meeting of the UN Security Council, Chinese Representative Geng Shuang said that the Nord Stream pipelines are the main artery for energy transportation and supply gas to 23 European countries, and said that these leaks have exacerbated energy supply shortages on that continent and that an objective investigation is needed. He also warned that consumers in developing countries will suffer from the subsequent volatility in the energy markets and soaring prices. About 7,000 people gathered in front of Moldova's government building to protest against the country's energy regulator's latest decision to raise the gas price, which is currently 6 times higher than 1 year ago. The country's energy authorities have recently raised the price of natural gas again to $1.5 per cubic meter, while inflation in Moldova has surged over 34%. Amid the soaring living costs, massive protesters took to the streets to express their dissatisfaction and demanded actions from the government to address the pressing problems. The demonstrators also called for the resignation of President Maia Sandu and for early elections to be held by the parliament.
I think if our government doesn't know how to rule the country and set regular prices for gas, heating, electricity and food, if all they can do is keeping people in poverty and they don't want to or are unable to rule the country, they should resign. The gas price is higher than the pension, let alone the fees for other public services. How do people have money for medicine or food? Who can afford a gas bill of $290 on a monthly pension income of $116?
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas, welcomed the resolution of the crisis in Burkina Faso following the resignation of Lieutenant Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba as a result of the coup d'etat perpetrated on Friday. In a communique issued late on Sunday, the head of state of Guinea-Bissau and current president of the CDO, Umaro Sissoko Embalo, hailed the various parties in Burkina Faso for having accepted a peaceful solution to their differences. He particularly highlighted the decision of Lieutenant Colonel Damiba to relinquish his functions as president of the transitional government to avoid a violent confrontation. In this regard, he urged the people of Burkina Faso to resolve their differences through dialogue and demanded that the new Burkinabe authorities respect the commitment made to the Ecowas. In Kenya, President William Ruto said he will advocate national unity and stressed that no part of the country will be left out in terms of development. The Kenyan head of state reiterated that the time of political competition was over and pointed out that now was the time to work for the country. The president explained that among the government plans are planned the improvement of the roads, the construction of 5,000 homes down the coast for the population, and the repair of the sewerage and water system in the city. Ruto maintains a conciliatory tone towards the leaders who opposed the results that made him the fifth president of Kenya after independence in 1963. On Monday, 2 Palestinians were killed by Israeli soldiers who stormed Ramallah city. The Israeli army opened fire against a Palestinian vehicle located at the Al Jalazun refugee camp, claiming the lives of Khalid Amber and Basal Basbus, also injuring Salam Rafat. Khaled Al-Dabas, the mother of one of the assassinated young men, said they were unarmed and qualified the incident as an execution. Palestine has seen an escalation of civil murders by the Israeli forces since March, despite international condemnation and denounces. Indonesian Security Minister Mohammed Mahfud said on Monday he will lead an inquiry to investigate violations of the law in the football stadium mass crash, which killed 125 people. The deaths occurred in a stampede set off by police tear gas after an Indonesian soccer match in Malang, East Java on Sunday. Indonesian President Joko Widodo ordered the Premier Soccer League suspended until safety was re-evaluated and security tightened. Police said 18 officers responsible for firing tear gas, as well as security managers, were being investigated. Law enforcement agencies are also analyzing footage from 32 security cameras inside and outside the stadium and 9 mobile phones owned by the victims as part of the investigations to identify suspects. The mass rush was among the world's deadliest disasters ever at a sporting event. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.